Welcome to Factory Connection Racing, the home of the GEICO Honda race team. So this is all of our championship bikes and a couple of our unique bikes that have won races or special races. Like that's RJ's MXGP bike. Actually right here is Wyndham's 2008, but it's actually on its way to Daytona. It's going to be on display there, so hopefully some fans get to see it. But yeah, the only one that's not in here is Chase's last year's bike. So we need to get that one together, but it's every other one, you know, from Malcolm's all the way down to Preston's 125. For me, it's crazy too. When I got here, there was only two. So I've been here from Kennard's 2010 and forward. So, I mean, it's crazy. We really went on a hot streak for a little bit there, and it was, I mean, we had some great years. You know, the highlight of that, I think, was winning both East and West in the same year. We had Barsha win the East and Tomac win the West in 2012, and that was one of the highs for sure. So coming into the shop, we have our history here. So this is our 22nd season, I believe. Yeah, 22. So started back in '98 with just LaRocco, and it's just come on and on over the course of time, you know, all the way to present. So pretty cool reminder of what this team stands for and how many guys have come through our program. I mean, successful guys, you know, it's cool to watch 450s and know that a lot of the guys came through here. This is our engine R&D room. Well, engine and chassis R&D, just R&D in general. Right now the engine guys actually store their disassembled motors in here, but over here we have a flat plate with a pretty prehistoric measuring tool, but it's from the 80s. Honda gave it to us when they got a new one. So we got this stone, and it's just a good place to you know, check in on our hard points. We can do a lot of hard point scanning with that and figure out what our pivot height is, our wheelbase, things like that we can, you know, one, try to figure out how to make the bike better, and two, just know exactly where we are and be educated. Now going into the parts room. So this is where everything is housed. I mean, everything from sponsor product, aftermarket parts, to all of our OEM Honda parts, our works parts, everything that we have is through here. This is also where we do all of our shipping and receiving is done in here, so a lot of inventory is done in here, such things. It's nice when these show up. Danny just sent these, so it's good to need red plates. Yeah, moving down, so the OEM parts start, we do it alphanumeric, so the mechanics will find the parts book, and you know, every part that is needed for the CRF 250 is pretty much in here, and we do have a lot of it. You know, it's quite crazy, but we have a lot of riders. You know, we have 8 riders, so you know, we do burn through some parts. Here, a lot of our works parts are held in here, so our works clamps, so different offsets, bearing races, sleeves, you know, anything needed to make our clamps work. Over the course of time, the forks upper tube dimension kind of has switched, so we have sleeves, so our clamps have stayed the same for years and years, so it's quite nice to have the sleeves, so even if our clamps are old, we can still fit them into whatever fork tube size is needed. This is a lot of our used works parts. So, like I said, we go through a lot of parts, but we also try not to be wasteful. So, if the parts are good, they're still good for a long time. So we, you know, we keep a lot of the old parts and continue to use them until they are no good anymore. But yeah, a lot of little trinkets, bar mounts. We have a million different bar mount positions. You know, it's you know, forward 0, 3, 6, 9, and up. You know, we have so many different dimensions. We have different heights, pins that we run, so we can change the heights. We can really dial in the rider to exactly where they want the bars and the feel that they're looking for. A lot of the small parts are kept in here, so the people always love these ones. This is our special aluminum fasteners, so you know, a lot of A lot of our little trinkets are, you know, aluminum nuts, you know, aluminum, everything aluminum's in here. So spacers these are pretty cool. These are little air filter bolts. All the titanium's here as well. Actually, this is more aluminum. But yeah, some of our parts are actually really quite nice. But these parts, honestly, they've been the same since I've been here in 2010 and before. This part has not changed in years and years and years. So, you know, the design for sure we for sure got our money's worth out of the design for how long we've run the part. Once again, titanium fasteners now, you know, just everything the mechanics need. And our parts manager, his job is to maintain inventory, know what we use, know what we need, know what we've gone through. Actually, when I started on this team, I was the parts manager, so this department kind of, you know, it's where I started here, so I've grown quite a bit, but so has this room. But yeah, OEM fasteners, you know, it just keeps going. Here's all the new works, bar mounts and stuff. So our bar mount bridges, modified for the GPS sensor. All of our stuff now is pretty nice. I used to have to hand engrave this back in the day, but now it's already etched, so just small revisions over the time. OEM linkage parts. This is our sponsor. This is from ARC. Mark Bob gives us a lot of options. So, you know, we have different leverage ratios and whatnot we can pick to really dial the clutch in for what the rider's looking for. We have this little toolbox here, but it actually holds our graphics. So this is all it's like the decor drawer. So yeah, all of our stickers, everything needed for the bikes to keep them looking the way they look. Yeah, the whole lot, seat covers. Just the different specs. We actually have 3 different spec seat covers. So Jeremy's the odd one out on that. He prefers the rib seat cover, but we have 2 spec rib seat covers. So Jeremy prefers an 11 rib. The other guy's ribs start about halfway and go back. Jeremy's go all the way up the tank. This is basically the pro taper department. So sprockets and grips, bars, all of our different bars that we use. Each guy, a couple guys run the same spec, but you know, there's a couple odd guys out. And then gearing, basically every gearing option that's available we have. So we try to be fruitful. Even though we have a lot of product, we still try to, you know, like this one's been ran, but clearly it's still good. So we run things till they're dead. So by the time we're done with them, no one wants them. Yeah, all of our Sycra products here. So I mean, Sycra has been involved with the team. I'm actually not sure on the date, but I mean, maybe as long as Sycra's been around. I'm not 100% sure. We actually need to figure that out. But they've been a massive team sponsor for, you know, a very long time, and that's something that our team is proud of. We try to keep a lot of our vendors and sponsors the same and have long-standing relationships with them, so we are into that. Coming out the opposite door from the door we came in, this is something that the mechanics are very fond of. It's an indoor wash area, so if it's ever cold or raining or anything outside, the mechanics, we don't pressure wash bikes in here, but we do have a pressure washer. If the bike was already clean and, you know, like, for example, after the race, they would wash the bike outside, but they can kind of pull all the plastic off and then bring it in here before they frame it and wash it again, just so it's real nice and clean. So the mechanics are quite fond of that. And then once the bike's apart, washing the parts individually, washing their wheels, you know, doing that final scrub on it. This is new. This is everybody's favorite tool. This is our vapor blaster, and more crap goes in that thing than probably should, but that makes aluminum look unbelievable, so they all love it. So down the washroom, so that side is our chassis tanks. So This side is our engine. We do not mix our chassis parts washing with our engine parts washing, just because the chassis parts typically have so much more dirt on them. And the engine obviously needs to be clean. So this is engine only, that's chassis. And that's basically just hot soapy water on both sides. So moving on is our technical coordinator's bay. So he has his office, which is kind of like a recording studio almost. He's got a glass window so he can look out and see the mechanics, you know, and he's basically the lead mechanic, so it kind of makes sense. It's a cool setup. This bay, it's kind of like the R&D bay, so any test bikes or special projects kind of happen here. This is a lot of our, well, actually all of our wiring happens here, so we do all of our wiring in-house. So this is actually something we're quite proud of and have gotten a lot of credit for from outside industries, you know, dealing with HPD and companies like that. They think it's really cool that we do our own wiring. Not that the stock wiring is bad, but our demands are different than the OEM demands, you know, and that's basically just because of how much we work on stuff. So we have the bike apart a lot more frequently than the general consumer. So realistically, it's just the wire tug on connector that damages wiring harnesses. So being that we do that a lot more, we try to build our harnesses a little bit stronger, as well as waterproof. Water is our biggest enemy in this sport, and it's not necessarily water from riding the bike like in a mud race. It's not that. It's the fact that we pressure wash and we shoot 3,000 psi water at our bike, which inherently gets in our connectors and then creates issues. So we've done everything we can to try to eliminate these problems. So we have our complete wiring harness. Once again, this is another position that I've had on this team. This is where I sat for the last 2 or 3 years. So kind of built this up on my own with help from a couple other guys, but kind of just built it out of need, really. It's quite interesting. Show this off a bit. This is a data harness in the works. Our new technical coordinator, Ricky, does an excellent job, but as you can see, this is the start of a data harness. So this will eventually be on someone's bike, recording everything from, we have 2 CAN buses in that harness. We have the OEM, or not the OEM, the Vortex CAN bus. Vortex is awesome for us. They have given us their CAN protocol, which we have programmed with the help of one of our technical vendors, Oem, into, we have a very detailed CAN bus that we record. I believe we record around 35 channels just from the ECU alone. So, I mean, we record crazy detail with from our Vortex ECU. We have injector loads, injector duties, injector firing angles, injector shutoff angles, injector duration, ignition advancement angles. Like, we record so many different things, and then even simple stuff as far as if the kill switch is on. So that really helps us in troubleshooting, you know, because we can pull the data and you know, the bike turns off and we can pull the data and see that it was the kill switch, you know. That's one thing that the data's really helped with. I know a lot of people think it's witchcraft and whatever, but you know, we've saved a lot of money since we've been running data. Even though data costs money, we saved a lot of money. Before, the old school way was if you had a problem, you threw the entire electrical system away, or at least put it aside and changed everything. Like at the race, you would do that. Where now we can pinpoint problems. I mean, I think, you know, recently we found a faulty intake air temp sensor, you know, just things like that, like which affect the bike's running, make it gurgle, make it boo up, any of those type of things where you can pinpoint it and change it. basically each rider has their own dedicated mechanic and their own dedicated bay. So Sexton to Martin, Craig, Jetson, Hunter, Joe, and then Carson's at that end, and then in the very back, Hunter Yoder's down there. So the last two are kind of our amateur bays. But yeah, here's Hunter's race bike laid out, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, we haven't needed it yet, but here's what it looks like laid out. So the parts manager will pull all the special parts, especially when it comes to like the new titanium parts, the carbon parts, all of our special made stuff, foot pegs, whatnot. The parts manager will pull that for each guy. So he's got to be pretty in tune with their spec. And then they get it all laid out and put it together. This is the suspension department. So we did an episode on suspension, but this is the actual room. There's kind of actually some stuff from the archives here. I believe this is Wyndham's work suspension that's just been sitting there since he's been done. But I mean, you know, a work of art, billet shock body that doesn't fit anything anymore, and we can't throw it away because it's too pretty, so we just hang on to it. But yeah, in here, it's like their little parts room there, and stuff in staging. So, you know, like example, this is Jet's suspension awaiting service. So it's fully disassembled and just awaiting Jet to get ready. Here's J-Mart's forks, shock all disassembled, waiting. Just waiting for either spec change or the part to have a need. This is where the magic happens. Suspension to room. So clearly we're owned by Factory Connection. So in the last few years, we haven't really had a Factory Connection representative. So Ziggy made a big change this year, and we hired Jacob, who actually worked at the Factory Connection Florida location, and that really helps our program because Jacob has a direct line of communication with Factory Connection East, with Mike Haste, Peter Page, and Ziggy himself. So, you know, it really helps us develop our product. We use Showa suspension, and we're owned by Factory Connection, so that gives us a really big advantage. One, we have the power of Showa, which Showa is an immense company with immense resources and an immense amount of knowledge in suspension, you know. And then we have Ziggy, who is an extremely talented tuner. His team behind him, between Michael Haste and Peter Page, do a lot of work for us in the background, whether it's dynoing suspension components, just looking at our settings, just keeping an eye on where we're at and where we're going. So it's really nice to have them behind us to help us, and not necessarily all the time help us, but at least know where we are. If we start struggling or start getting in a bind, you know, Ziggy can make an easy poke at us and get us turned around and get us headed in the right direction. So it's a huge benefit that we have here. This is the engine department. Once again, we had an episode on this that was a little bit more in depth, but just to show you where it fits into the shop. We have 3 engine builders. We have Mick, we have Gil, and we have Pedro. And this year, leading the bunch, we have Ryan Cox. So, just business as usual in here. Race engines come back from the weekend. They get disassembled, spread out on the bench, gone through. If it needs to be replaced, it's replaced. If it doesn't, it's not. So we, like I said, even though we have a ton of parts, we try to not be wasteful with those parts. We try to use them for their entire life. On this shelf here, it's practice engines either coming back or ready to go. So post-service, just sitting there ready. You know, each motor has a home. Each rider has a rotation of motors. Each rider has 3 practice engines and 3 race engines, so that gives them 1 spare, 1 in the bike, and 1 that should be in or out of service. So same with the racing. One in the cabinet, one in the bike, and one in transit or in service. The engine room has their own inventory as well, so they're not walking back and forth a long way. So the OEM parts are in the red bins, the works parts are in the blue bins. So we are lucky enough to have some works parts from Honda, little access to some stuff that really makes a big difference. So from the engine room, we come to the R&D bay. So these two mules are our dyno bikes. So one of them's delegated for development. So that's Ryan's bike to do his mapping, do his motor testing and whatnot. And the other one is for the motors that come in and out. So every motor that gets built gets verified. Well, it gets put into the bike and we verify it in the dyno in the back. So we just, one, it breaks the motor in. Two, we ensure that the performance is where it needs to be. This is our machine shop. We don't really make parts in here. We more so modify existing parts, or we actually primarily make tools from here. So a lot of our engine tools are made in here, and a lot of our suspension tools. So just special, things, little trinkets like this we make in here to just help for pushing the stem into the clamp. Just little things like that that are quite simple. You can cut out on the lathe by hand if you know what you're doing a little bit. So I mean, we don't really have any machinists that work in here. It's just, the mechanics and our staff that is competent enough to operate a machine and smart enough to be able to execute ideas. We do weird things, build mock-up motors and just look at how things fit into chassis and how we can modify them and make them better, just odds and ends. We have a welding table there. We will, modify subframes and small projects. We don't do heavy welding, but small little things we can weld up. This big void here is where the semis are parked. The amateur trailer is currently at Honda, getting stocked. So Honda will stock the amateur trailer for basically for people, for Honda support. So if you're racing Lorettas and you have a problem, you can come to that truck and they typically have what you're looking for on there or can help you diagnose the problem. So that's at Honda, and obviously the race truck is in Atlanta, I believe right now, yeah, Atlanta. So this is the dyno room. As I said, every motor that gets built will be verified in here. So we do all of our mapping in here. We do all of our performance validation in here and our R&D testing in here. That's why it's quite a bit of a mess. I believe recently we were just going through some cams, so Ryan he opens the motor hot. We just run it, change the cam, run it again. So just back-to-back validation of performance. Upstairs now, conference room. We do all of our team meetings in there and various other things, but mostly team meetings. TV on the wall. We've been watching the races with the boys, just seeing as a group, looking at the bike, seeing what we think it needs or if it needs anything. Plus it's just kind of a good, kind of do it on lunch break, and it's good. Administration office, and then my office in the center there. But yeah, Darren, he does a lot. He does, anything from payroll to paying the electricity to, truck registration. He does a lot of different things in there, but this is kind of the central hub. And then, of course, our gym. So we're extremely lucky to have this. I know the riders, when they're in town, are very fond of this. It's a little private gym. I mean, it's extremely nice gym. It's as on par or better than any gym that I've ever gone to. So gives them the opportunity to train. Some of the guys, once they start getting better off in their career, it's hard for them to go to 24-hour fitness to get wrecking, especially in Southern California. So they can stay private here, you know, and every now and then, you know, some other guys use it as well. I mean, Tomac still comes here. He trains with Jeremy in here, and Kenny Roxon and Chase will train in here together sometimes. From the gym, we kind of got our little lunch break area, little ping pong table for the guys that are into that. And then you can kind of look down and see the whole shop in a big overview. So that's pretty much it. I appreciate you guys stopping by and checking it out. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and thank you.